Welcome to SchezzWho, Hampton Roads' top spot for politics. My Why Vote series is providing an underliner of that very concept, the top spot for politics. The Why Vote Independent show featured Tom Yeager of the Virginia Green Party and Chase Oliver, the Libertarian nominee for president. It's been heavily viewed. And my Why Vote Trump show, just this past Monday night, is my most watched show yet at over 130 views. Now on to tonight's show. Why vote Kamala Harris for president? I reached out to serious folks with impressive resumes and who I've seen make the case for her online. I'll go topic by topic, just like I did with my Republican friends a couple days back. And then I'll tell you, the SchezzWho viewer, why to vote Kamala Harris there at the end. And I want tonight to be just as watched and as comment heavy as Monday. So you guys don't be shy. Don't be shy about liking this video. Don't be shy about commenting and questioning, especially live as this video goes on. And don't be shy about subscribing to this channel, because as this channel grows, the more likely it is for your political information diet to be filled. This video and all SchezzWho videos are brought to you by important people. And I'm going to start, of course, with the founder of the channel herself, Miss Andrea Dixon, who now works for the state of Virginia and the Department of Energy and Workforce Development. So great for her. Thank you for founding this channel. Love you, proud of you, and all that jazz. Of course, my good friend, Miss Ellen at Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue Express, with a location here in Portsmouth at Portsmouth Boulevard and a location in Virginia Beach across from Regent University. Great food. Look up Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue Express. Can't forget the guy who got me into doing podcasts in the first place. Remember, I used to do the Beach Brothers show, and that's Mr. Seiko Varner, who was on the show with me. And his business, Positive Vibes Incorporated, does credit fixes, does tax resolution, does private money lending, and debt consolidation. So look up Positive Vibes Financial at gmail.com. 757-932-0177 in order to contact him, and also look up his new app that he created, the Hampton Roads Green Book, a good app for the Hampton Roads area for looking specifically for Black and Brown owned businesses, because we want to help those out. He created that app, so you download that app and we can be able to go to those businesses with the assistance of finding them through the app. So definitely look them up. Also want to shout out a couple of new supporters, and that is Farley Perkins over at Insurance Broker Agency, owner at Brightway Insurance, the Farley Perkins Agency, farley.perkins@brightway.com, 757-271-6655, and of course, brightwayfarleyperkins.com. There's also ELG Suite Boutique, also in Portsmouth, 340 High Street in Portsmouth. Got the number right there. They're a great ice cream place, which also does shakes, at the Old Town Portsmouth section. So look them up. Now, that is just for the supporters who help get this show off the ground. But for the show itself, I'm going to bring to you these great guests that I have, and they're going to tell you why to vote for Kamala Harris for president. Tavoris Marks is the owner of Tavoris K. Marks State Farm in Hopewell, Virginia. Tavoris is a United States Army veteran with over 15 years of honorable service, both in military police and military intelligence, and over 8 years of service in various leadership roles in state and federal government. He is also known for his active community service there in Central Virginia. Tavoris is an alumni of Norfolk State University, behold the green and gold, and the University of Virginia, the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, and the University of Richmond, respectively. He earned a master's degree in urban affairs and public administration, a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies in sociology, and a professional certificate in paralegal studies, contract law. Tavoris has also run for delegate in Virginia, so you know he's a serious political mind. Also, Monica Hutchinson's coming on the show, also of Virginia. Currently the policy director for Rise for Youth. RISE, which stands for Reinvest in Supportive Environments, is a youth justice advocacy nonprofit organization whose goal is to end youth incarceration by centering our youth and taking a more community-centered public health approach to public safety. Monica is extremely passionate about her communities here in Virginia and hopes to inspire many with her vision of a commonwealth where everyone works together towards racial, social, and political justice. She is also driven to fight for issues including civil rights, youth justice, voting rights, restorative criminal justice reform, education, women's equality, reproductive rights, healthcare, living wage, paid leave, and more. She's the graduate of the Virginia Progressive Leadership Project, Cohort 5, 2019 alumna of the Black Campaign School by the Collective PAC, and serves multiple organizations through volunteer and civic engagement, including Black Voters Matter, Win with Black Women in the Henrico NAACP, where she currently serves as the branch president. Monica also organizes on the national level as a founding member and current vice president of the Government Relations for Women of Color Coalition, admin for Virginia Women for Harris Walls, formerly Biden Harris, and more. And in 2020, Monica was elected to be a Virginia state delegate and Virginia at-large DNC delegate for President Joe Biden, and traveled to Pennsylvania to work as deputy director of volunteer voter outreach for Vote Blue. She's again elected to serve as a 2024 Virginia state delegate and Virginia at-large DNC delegate for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. She's fiercely dedicated to electing Democrats up and down the ballot. So, she's just as serious. Also, good friend Derek Wade is a longtime Facebook friend from the days of the 1 million strong for Barack Obama debate group. At the time, we were both disagreeable libertarian or Republican types, but thankfully we moved left since 2008. He's a long-term intelligence analyst with a background in tech industry. He currently works for the biomedical firm. He spent a year in support of Operation New Dawn as a National Guardsman, and he worked for nearly 4 years as a federal contractor in analytical services for the military in Afghanistan. And thankfully, I am able to bring them on right now. I want to say hello to both of you. Mr. Tavoris, we're still waiting for him to get on. We'll tap him on as soon as he gets in. But I want to say hello to you guys. I hope you're having a great night.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being willing to take part as we discuss why to vote Kamala Harris for president. So much like my previous show, in fact, I just heard Tavoris. Let's get him back on. And now he's on. That's awesome. Good to see you, Mr. Tavoris. We're right at the point of getting ready to break down my premise here. I looked up several polls like Gallup, tracking the biggest issues for the 2024 voter. And like with the Trump show, I simply asked my panelists why vote Donald Trump based on that particular issue, one at a time. So let's lead off with the economy. Why vote Kamala Harris for the economy? And you guys can, whoever wants to go first, go first.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to say really quickly that just want to make sure I remind everybody that her name is pronounced Kamala. Kamala, like the punctuation, la. So yes, so Kamala. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I said that first. So let me see. You guys want to jump in and talk about the economy?
I think the best possible reason, I mean, just a few days ago, we had a report that a majority of economists in the United States foresee that the economy will do better, grow faster under a Kamala Harris presidency than it will under a Donald Trump presidency. And that seems to track with the record for Democrats. When Democrats are in office, the economy tends to do better. And that's been the case for as long as I've been alive, if not longer.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that and second that. But I also would point out to look at someone's track record. When we're talking about the economy, it's almost like managing the United States checkbook, ensuring that we're always, in balance and making sure we have a healthy GDP and money coming in. Everything Donald Trump has touched, he's either bankrupt or ran into the ground. Atlantic City is a perfect example. Atlantic City, New Jersey, perfect example. Look what happened there when Donald Trump came there. Look at Donald Trump's personal businesses, who've all failed, who've all filed for bankruptcy. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that, the guy's just not good with money.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I also just want to add that, so I'm a data nerd, I'm not gonna lie. But since 1989, 51 million jobs has been added. to the U.S. economy, and 50 million of them have been underneath Democratic presidents. So I'm going to throw that out there real quick. So the fact that 50 out of 51 million since 1989 jobs created are under Democratic presidents, like, I don't think, like, that's not a coincidence, right? Like, we all know this, that once Dems come in office, and usually whenever a Democrat comes in office after a Republican, we know the economy is usually in the toilet. It's crap. You know, President Clinton had to clean up after Bush Sr. President Obama had to clean up after Bush Jr. President Biden had to clean up after Trump. So, I mean, like, it's just like, this isn't a coincidence. We understand this is what happens. And also when you look at their plans for the future, right? And so I will say that, you know, as a Black woman, obviously, I mean, I care about everybody, but I also care about what's going to happen to the Black community. And my husband is a barber. So my husband is a small business owner, right? And so the fact that when I look at their plans for small business owners, and specifically Black small business owners, right? It's, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? I don't want to hear about talk. Talk is cheap, right? But what are your actual plans? And I want to hear about a concept. I want to know, what are your plans? Because he doesn't have any plans for Black America.
$5,000 in the first year that you have to take in that first year versus $50,000 as a tax break that you can take in any year when you're actually turning a profit, rather than in that first year where you're usually hurting for money.
That part, right? Because everybody knows when you first start a business, you're in the red for a few years before you get into the black. So, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
having a government that understands that and respects it.
Right.
And that kind of competent leadership in federal agencies, that makes a huge difference when you're trying to start a business.
It absolutely does, right? And then also just making sure that we can also ease the financial stress on just people in general, but especially in the Black community, because so many issues intersect. And when we look at especially our Black men in our community, you know, the risk of high blood pressure, the risk of heart disease, all of those risk factors are higher because of environmental factors and things like extra stress and all of these things, right? And so making sure that we have a strong economy is absolutely vital for the health and for the Black community to thrive, to ensure that, you know, our families are healthy. When our families are healthy, our communities are healthy, and all these come into play. And it's just so interesting that people have PTSD, I guess, because of the Trump years, that people are just like now going back and looking at his 4 years through rose-tinted lens, you know, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, COVID, but before COVID, he was still riding the coattails of President Obama's administration. So let's not act like he came in office and all of a sudden he waved some kind of magic wand and he created this great economy. President Obama and Vice President Biden at the time, they had already set this trajectory. They set our economy on a path to success. And when Trump's mismanagement of COVID happened, completely demolished whatever gains and whatever things that we had, you know, was completely wiped out.
Yeah, and even before that, a little bit, you were seeing signs of things like when we went to renegotiate NAFTA, and we ended up coming away from it in an even worse position. And this is a pattern with our agreements that we've seen with Donald Trump, both domestically and abroad, is that we back out of like the joint agreement that was preventing Iran from developing nuclear weapons by offering them some other off-ramp besides building a nuclear weapon. And only too late, he's realized, oh, now I understand why we have that. And now he's coming back around to proposing, in not so many words, the agreement that we had in place 10 years ago. And then we see the same thing with NAFTA, where we ends up getting slightly less favorable, you know, conditions than we had before, or we get like a minor concession from Mexico on something that wasn't really worth all of the effort expended. And economic growth really wasn't that impressive under the Trump administration. Manufacturing growth has exploded under Biden by comparison.
It has. And I see somebody ask the question of what are her economic policies. So glad you asked that question. Let me go to my notes here. Okay. So let's start with rural America. Okay, so part of the Harris Wealth Plan for rural America to support farmers and strengthen the rural economy. And how will we do that? By improving access to credit, land, and market for farmers, ensure farmland remains farmland and isn't taken over by corporate buyers, to lower costs and cut taxes for rural and tribal families, and partner with local communities to expand childcare, housing, and job training, right? That's for rural America. Now, let's come on over to for Black America, right? Specifically Black men. I know everybody knows that she just released this economic plan just in the past few days, right? One point is to provide $1 million loans that are fully forgivable up to 20K for Black entrepreneurs. I know we were just mentioning about that, and others to start a business, support education training and mentorship programs that lead to good paying jobs for Black men, including pathways to become teachers. To launch a national health initiative focused on the illnesses that disproportionately impact Black men. I literally had just mentioned how our health and economic security are intertwined, are linked. And also, we cannot forget to legalize recreational marijuana and ensure that people that have been historically negatively impacted by the laws of the past when it comes to marijuana, that they are in an equitable way are allowed or given access to achieve or to get licenses to sell recreational marijuana, right? We have to right some wrongs, because we have people sitting in prison right now for marijuana offenses when marijuana is now legal, right? So we do have to right some wrongs. So, these are just some of the ways that I know she's talking about doing. And also, cannot forget about like childcare for everybody, right? Like, we have to make sure that we are expanding access to childcare for families, because we understand that, having access to quality childcare, and not just childcare. I would also, say that we also need to be pushing for early childhood development, because we know that a child has got to come into pre-K prepared and ready at a basic level in order for them to be able to continue building on that knowledge that's already been set, right? So we know childcare, paid family and medical leave is another economic policy that I know that Vice President Harris also supports, and ensuring that we have a pathway to achieve paid family and medical leave. And for anybody wondering, paid family and medical leave is not FMLA. FMLA is not paid leave. FMLA is unpaid leave, and over 55% of the people that work in America do not have access to unpaid leave, right? So, and majority of those who don't have access are Black and brown women.
And to answer that last question, yes, absolutely. Release people that she helped lock up. She was a district attorney. Her job is to enforce the law. Within the bounds of that, she has some discretion as to the law, as to how she enforces that law. And I believe that she actually exercised quite a bit of it where recreational marijuana was concerned when she was a DA. But I just want to make the point that if we're going to say that, well, you had this other position 10 years ago, and now you can't hold this other position, where does that leave people like me? I was a diehard Christian conservative Republican in 2009.
In 2012, I wrote a very strongly worded article to the Virginia Pilot in support of gun rights after Sandy Hook. I am not of that position anymore. So.
Right. We have to be able to grow, and that includes Kamala Harris.
Right. Well, I just also want to also push back on that and add a little more context, right? Because I think that's one of the biggest misinformation / disinformation that we have out here, is that somehow Kamala was just locking people up for marijuana offenses, which we know is absolutely not true. And I will say that, one, when she was Attorney General of California, don't believe me, you can look at the data, you can look at the numbers, right? For the years that she was Attorney General, you can see there was a steep decline in marijuana offenses that were being prosecuted, right? Because of her direction. And she was extremely progressive on this issue. Matter of fact, other people were like, saying, oh, you don't care, like you're not tough on crime, like you're not, you're not prosecuting these crimes and things of that nature, because she never wanted to just prosecute people for marijuana offenses. And so it's one of the biggest misconceptions and point blank just lies that are out there about it. Now, did she prosecute people? Absolutely. But it's interesting because when you talk to people who was actually very active, right? Not now, but was active back then. One of the things that they will also tell you is, yes, she did prosecute people for marijuana offenses, and we cannot deny the fact that some of the people she prosecuted was also preying on the Black community. So we have to also acknowledge that, right? That some of the people were absolutely causing harm to our community as well. But she also believes in making sure that we were creating pathways for people to truly be reformed, right? To lower the rate of recidivism and all of these things. And so she believes in reformative criminal justice reform, restorative criminal justice reform. Before it was like a cute name for it, she believed in it and she did it. And she created programs for people who were coming home, for returning citizens, to ensure that they did not reoffend and that they had everything that they needed for them when they came back home and re-entered into society for them to become successful, right? So it's like, let's not forget about all of that. But like you said, she was a prosecutor, and we know that we have to have prosecutors, and I know I would damn sure rather have somebody like Vice President Kamala Harris sitting in that chair than somebody who like Donald Trump.
And let's not forget, this is a man, Donald Trump, who said, I think drug dealers should be executed. Now, I think he has an absolutely sort of, let's be honest, he probably has a very odd and racist perception of what a drug dealer is. Like, a lot of drug dealers are just regular people who just live in houses and make extra money that way. And it's one of those things where, yes, they are committing a crime by dealing. Absolutely. That's true. But these are not hardened psychotic killers. They don't require execution. That's absolutely mind-bogglingly insane. And the fact that we're discussing, well, you know, she locked up some people, you know, because those were the laws on the books at the time. Let's keep in mind that the alternative being proposed is let's just shoot the people. And that's, you know, night and day worse than what Kamala Harris is suggesting that we do.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, we have delved in pretty deep on some of those economic-based questions. Remember, I do have quite a few more to get to. So, democracy in America. Why vote Kamala Harris?
Kamala.
Kamala. That's my bet. I will admit that is my bet. I just reflexively. Why vote for democracy for her?
One, I like to say voting democracy for Madam Future President Kamala Harris.
Kamala.
What's that?
Kamala.
Kamala. It rolls off the tongue so easy. Kamala. Madam Vice President Harris is simple for me. As a 15-year Army veteran who served my country, served my community, I strongly believe in the Constitution. I strongly believe in the values of this country. And Donald Trump exhibits none of those values. Very evident in January 6th. And even now, the interview he did just 2 days ago, where he said January 6th was a peaceful transfer of power. He got on his plane, he went to Florida. That is one of the most important things that I could ever hear from a person's mouth, particularly understanding that an officer lost his life that day. An officer did not make it home to his wife and kids that day. Multiple other officers were injured that day. Democracy almost ended that day had it not been for those fearless Capitol police officers and Metro DC police officers who stood in line and protected the Capitol. And not only that, but a Congress who decided to do what was right and to move forward and to certify the election. So Donald Trump is totally in opposition of everything which democracy stands for. But guess who was in that chamber during that time to help certify the election? Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris.
I will say that, I mean, democracy came so close to being on the brink in the United States on January 6th. Like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm used to seeing on a drone feed in a war zone, not in my own country in the Capitol building of, you know, where I live. Like, it's one of those things where he has exported a kind of violence to our system that it cannot survive. It is not built to survive. We are a nation that is built on the peaceful transfer of power. If we don't have that, this experiment is done and we've become something else. And so I don't think that there's really a choice in terms, if you're interested in preserving democracy in the United States, such as we understand it, there is no real choice to be had. Kamala Harris is far and away the better candidate for that.
Absolutely. And then I just want to add, right, that, and I know we say this a lot to people, like, you know, protect democracy. But I do think we need to kind of like explain it a little bit better. Like, what do we actually mean when we say protect democracy, right? And so I will just, you know, I always say, and I know is quite a few of us that always say, right, being Black in America means that, you know, I love my country, even though my country hasn't always loved me back, right? And when we talk about protecting democracy, protecting the right to vote is one of the things that we absolutely must protect. We see that the right to vote is under attack. It's been under attack from the 2016 election. He started laying the foundation. Should he had lost 2020, he laid the foundation again for when he lost, and we see what happened on January 6th. And he's laying the foundation again, right? And he's attacking Black voters, brown voters, predominantly Black voting precincts. Like we know the game, we know what they're doing. The United States Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act, 2014, 2015, right? And so Chief Justice Roberts will go down as the Chief Justice that presided over the court when rights were stripped away for the first time in our country's history, right? Like we lost rights. Women lost the right to abortion, and voting rights were gutted. So we cannot forget that, right? And so, we can have disagreements about policy all day. I love policy. I don't mind debating policy, talking about policy, but we have to have a solid democracy in order for us to have those conversations. And when you have Donald Trump saying things like, for those that oppose him, or radical leftists, everybody's a radical leftist to him that opposes him or whatever, that he wants to unleash the National Guard, in his words, and possibly the military on American citizens because we disagree with him. That should send shivers down your spine, right? And when he says radical leftists and release the military, come on. We all know he's talking about Black and brown communities. We all know that he's talking about us, that when we're out here protesting for Black Lives Matter, or we're protesting him, or whatever it is, that he wants to unleash the military on us and in our communities. He wants to impose martial law. You can't sugarcoat that. You can say whatever you want to say. Our own governor here in Virginia just, was trying to make all kind of excuses about it. You know what I mean? And that right there also, when you cannot admit, when you hear it come out of his mouth, when you see him say it and you still trying to, oh, he didn't mean it. No, he absolutely meant it. We know he meant it. And when you can't admit it, then you're telling me that you're also a threat. You don't mind dismantling democracy for you to have power or be power adjacent. And that should scare the hell out of people because it's not okay, right? So like I said, we can absolutely have disagreements, but we have to make sure that our democracy is in place in order for us to have agreements. And having somebody be a dictator or dismantling our Constitution is not okay. Like I said, and as a Black woman in America, the United States Constitution, my ancestors weren't even considered human, right? We weren't even considered a whole person when the Constitution was written. But the fact, like Tavora said, when January 6th happened, the Capitol Police, when you look at those officers and you saw that many of those officers were Black and brown officers that stood and protected the institution that kept our ancestors in bondage, when you really sit down and think about the facts of who stood and ensured that our Constitution was solid and that institution was protected, that should absolutely make you understand how serious this is to us. Because like I said, if anybody should be mad, it should have been our ancestors, right? But that's not who we are. And so watching these people to attack our government, to attack, our institution, all because of one man, because he mad that he lost, it is sickening. And I don't know, it just infuriates me.
I think it's important to reiterate this as well when we talk about the military. Just the other day, General Mark Milley, former chief of staff, and to help you understand this is the top man in the United States military over all our militaries. Mm-hmm. Clearly stated, that was released inside Bob Woodruff's book, that Donald Trump is a fascist to the core. And he is the biggest threat to America. This is our top military general speaking about a United States citizen who unfortunately was once the president of this country. When we talk about democracy and threats to democracy, hearing that from our top military official should have sent chills down every American spine across this country.
It's more than just democracy. It's every institution in the United States government that's at risk. And if you're a veteran like myself and Tavora Star, these institutions mean everything to us. We serve these institutions proudly, and it's our job to uphold these, and if we have to die to uphold them, that's a requirement that may be placed upon us. And so I think, yeah, you saw that kind of devotion in those cops that were defending the Capitol on that day. They were willing to die to defend that place. And I respect them immensely for that. I've not always been a fan of how policing is done in the United States, but they stood between a serious, credible threat to democracy and, the Congress, who they didn't necessarily, being that these were Black and brown men, these are the men in America least likely to feel like they owe the United States anything, because we've treated them horribly for decades, centuries. But yeah, it's absolutely incredible. It's a powerful message of unity. That's what we stand to lose, I fear, if Trump wins again. And I don't want us to lose that. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing for us to hold on to.
Right. And I just want to say really quickly, because I saw somebody say that all politicians stretch the truth. Let me say something, babe. Like, like politicians may stretch the truth. Trump does not stretch the truth. Trump broke it a long time ago. Trump flat out lies.
There is no relationship to the truth whatsoever.
Not at all, right? Like, the man wouldn't know the truth if it smacked him on the lips. Like, no, that man lie. He lie the way me and you breathe. Like, no. And talking about Biden's health, first of all, leave President Biden alone. Okay, President Biden is no longer running for president, and he's fine. But since you want to talk about somebody's health, let's talk about Donald Trump standing on stage for 39 minutes while he dancing like he got rigor mortis, okay, to YMCA and Macho Man by the Village People, okay, and all these people in there cheering him on, okay, dancing to songs about gay men, but y'all like to bash gay men, okay? He looks like somebody need to call a place for dad and come pick him up, okay? I'm like, somebody come get grandpa off the stage. Y'all want to talk about somebody's health? This man don't even know where he at. He can't even say insurrectionist. Man, miss me with all that about President Biden's health, because President Biden, he's not running for president.
President Trump is faded. He is
voting for Vice President Kamala Harris to be president if you want to talk about health.
Yeah, your choice is between somebody that's in her 50s and perfectly competent, or somebody that's in his 80s, pushing his 80s, and was gone about 10 years ago, but he's really starting to feel it now. Like, that was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything like that campaign event. That man was playing Ave Maria on stage, and I thought that was actually very apropos considering the state of his campaign.
Right. But YMCA, I'm like, who gonna tell them? I'm like, does your campaign people not like you? And you play Macho Man? Like, your campaign not like you, mister?
Hey, young man.
How about talking about terrorism and national security?
Oh boy.
VP Harris on that issues.
Sure. Well, go ahead.
All right. Well, there's really a lot to get into because the security picture around the world is complex, to say the least. There's a lot going on, and I think that we're asking voters to make decisions about a more complex security environment than anything they've ever seen before. When you look at like elections in 2004, 2008, 2012, Iraq and Afghanistan were really not big factors in the conversation. I mean, at times they were, especially with the surge. Bush took a lot of flack for surging troops into Iraq, and then Obama took flack for surging troops into Afghanistan. But let's not forget that Obama didn't always want to do that. He wanted out of Afghanistan, and the military kind of sort of maybe pressured him into staying. So it's worth considering that Biden was realizing a dream that Obama had a long time ago. And I'm glad that Biden was able to get us out of Afghanistan. That helps, for now, simplify our security picture a little bit, because we're not losing soldiers every day over there. I mean, the war in Ukraine is at a stalemate. I mean, you're seeing land exchanged here and there. The U.S. is continuing to provide aid at what I feel is probably not the most effective pace that it could provide aid. I think that our national security apparatus is a little too gun shy to provide aid to Ukraine for fear that Russia will escalate. But Russia's been threatening nuclear escalation for something like 7 or 8 years now. They've been doing nuclear bomber flights off the coast of Alaska for something like 20 years. Ever since I joined the military in 2007, they've been acting like they wanted to be the Soviet Union again, but they're not. They're not the Soviet Union again. It really wouldn't take much to push them over, except for Europe and the United States unifying and saying, no, you need to stop.
Right.
And I think, and I hope that Kamala Harris will have a slightly more direct foreign policy where Vladimir Putin is concerned, because I think he needs to be told in more direct terms, you need to stop. Because I do think that Moldova and other countries on the west side of Ukraine will be next if he's not eventually told, you need to stop. His force regeneration is picking up speed. And while there are starting to, there's stressors starting to show in their economy, but it might be too little too late for Ukraine.
Well, just following up on that too, I would just say one of the things that we know, President, that having a President Kamala Harris would not be doing is having off the record conversations with our nation's enemies, right? We also treat our nation's allies with hostility. And so the fact that you have Trump that has been having conversations and having phone calls with Vladimir Putin, and when he's asked about it, he won't even answer, right? He's like, oh, I won't answer that. I'm not going to answer that. But if I did, it's fine. No, it's not. Like, dude, first of all, it is literally illegal if you did. Like, you cannot be having conversations. Like, you are not the president. You cannot be having those conversations unless the current administration is kept in a loop. Like, that's not how it works. Like, we're not having a shadow presidency, even though he thinks that we're having it. I don't know. He lives in the shadows, so maybe that's what he thinks is happening. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I know for a fact that wouldn't be happening with a President Kamala Harris, right? And like you said, we know that we would also get more aid going into Gaza. We get more aid going to Gaza. We would also make sure that Ukraine has what Ukraine needs to defeat Russia. And I'm not going to sit here and say that President Biden hasn't been doing what he needs to do, but because he has, right? But we also know that with different leadership, one thing that the world stage has never seen is a woman president of the United States, and has never seen a Black woman president of the United States. So that right there is going to bring a whole new perspective to the conversation that will absolutely take them, kind of push them back on their heels. So yeah, I'm excited and looking forward. And also add that it will also ensure that Netanyahu, who is out here acting crazy as hell too, to make sure that Netanyahu is also held accountable for his actions, because we cannot count what he's doing.
Exactly. And it's worth noting on that note, what is happening in Gaza is absolutely terrible. It needs to end. To that end, the United States is showing signs that it's starting to lose patience with Israel finally over this. I think they've put out a notice to Israel, I think yesterday, that you have 30 days to compose this issue in Gaza, or there may be consequences, including the suspension of military aid to Israel. Now, and I may be soft selling some of that. It may have been a lot more direct and firm than I presented it there, but I think you're seeing a clear sign that the United States is losing patience with Israel. This is a slow and glacial process, and I admit and agree that it is, but Israel has been one of our closest allies for something like 50 or 60 years now. That is a relationship, not unlike the one with Great Britain, that's going to take a long time to sort of change directions like that, because once we start to change directions like that, Israel is going to start looking elsewhere for guarantors for its national security.
Well, I would just add that, it's been like 50 or 50 so years, because they've only been a nation for about that long, right? So that's also right. So that's also really important. Also, you know what I'm saying? So,
it's younger than Biden.
I think when we talk about national security and things, I love a lot what Mr. Wade said and stated. Very much true and spot on. In my opinion, I think Netanyahu is a war criminal at this point in time. I stand firm on that. Additionally, we have to understand that what's going on in Ukraine and what's going on in Israel right now is being watched around the world, particularly by China. China wants nothing more than to go in and take over Taiwan. And we have to understand that a lot of people are like, well, why are we still involved in this war? Why does America have to play big brother to everybody? Well, there's a lot that comes with playing big brother. There's a lot that comes with these relationships. Right. That's why it's important that we remain a strong partner of NATO that Donald Trump wanted to take us out of. But when I sit back and I look at everything that's going on around the world in the sandbox, I would stand out on a ledge and say that our biggest threat to our national security is not on foreign soil. I think it's very here in the United States of America with domestic terrorism. I think we face a bigger threat here on American soil than we do anywhere else in this world.
Mhm.
And I think Donald Trump has really opened Pandora's box since his inauguration, since his election in 2016. And we have seen domestic terrorism escalate to a level that I've never seen during my lifetime, and probably not compared to anything since the KKK was riding their horses around back in the 40s and 50s.
Nope.
So I think we must really look at what's going on domestically. I think we should really start calling domestic terrorism out for what it is. There is no good people on both sides. No, there's bad people out there, and they look very much like your American patriot. And those individuals, in my opinion, are the biggest threat to America right now, to our national security, as well as our security right here at home.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I echo all of that. And I think we just also can't discount the fact that, so many things that we are seeing around the world is because when Trump was president, he allowed the instability to start taking root, right? Like to take hold. And he just kind of turned a blind eye to a lot of things that's happening. So, this instability didn't just happen overnight. It happened during those 4 years when he was president, because they knew that they could control him by flattery and all those other things. But at the end of the day, it's not about him, right? Whoever our president is not about the president. It is about our country as a whole and what is best for our country. And that right there is something that Trump and his supporters have absolutely lost sight of, is that it's not about him. It's about us. And we just can never do that. And one last thing about this is to say that, if we're going to call ourselves the leader of the free world, then we have to be the leaders of the free world. And one of the reasons why we don't have these battles on our shores is because we do fight these battles away from our shores, right? And whether people like it or not, there will be somebody at the top of the world order. And if it's not us, it will be either Russia or China. And so I don't know what world people want to live in, one where Russia or China is sitting at the top of the world order, or one where the United States is at the top of the world order, right? And so for that, right, like I said, somebody will be at the top. And so all of these people that make it seem like we can just pull our troops home and come to our shores and just like turn a blind eye to everybody, that's not how the world really works. The world is absolutely connected. Our trade is connected. So many things is connected that, I don't know. It just, when I hear people talk about things like that, I'm like, yeah, we've absolutely failed our country when it comes to education.
That world died in 1939 and it never came back.
Right. Absolutely right. There you go. So yeah. So I don't know. I just wanted to just point that out real quick.
You're absolutely right. Like, and there's a couple of thoughts that I had that I wanted to kind of expand on before we move on, because I think Conrad wants to move us on. Is Afghanistan, or I'm sorry, with respect to Afghanistan, I know that a lot of people on the Republican side have questioned the need for NATO. I think it's worth noting that when we were attacked by Al Qaeda on 9/11, and we chose to invade Afghanistan a month later, we invoked Article 5 of the NATO Charter and said, we need all of y'all to come with us. And they all showed up. Yep. And they showed up for the entire 20-year span that we were there. I was proud to work with NATO as a contractor. I worked with people from all over the world, and they didn't send their crappy officers. They sent some of their best people to work with us because they were proud to send people to this mission. They were proud to work with the United States. And we ought to honor their sacrifices by respecting them now, by understanding that it's not always practical for them to get to 4.5% GDP of military spending or whatever requirement Donald Trump wants to arbitrarily impose in his infinite military wisdom. But we need to understand these countries showed up for us when we asked. We need to be ready to show up for them if they ask. And right. The chances that we may need to do that is growing larger, but with the longer that we, continue to deal with Russia. And then with respect to Ukraine, the idea that Trump could end the war in 24 hours, that's his biggest brag with respect to Ukraine. He's going to end the war within 24 hours of taking office. That is not possible. The only way that he could do that is by cutting off Ukraine and then telling Russia where all their troops are.
Right. No, absolutely. And I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for your service. I truly mean that. Like I said, thank you for your service, and to any service, and to any of our military who may be watching or listening, thank you as well for your service to our country. It is greatly appreciated. But yeah, no, you're right. So I don't know. It just, it's just really frustrating when you hear people say that. And like you said, that Article 5 was invoked for the first and only time.
Mm-hmm.
He invoked it.
By us.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it is. And also, when they talk about how much money we're sending to Ukraine, they act like we're just like giving dollars to Ukraine. We're not. Like the money when they sign that defense package, a lot of that money comes right back to the United States to pay American workers in American factories to build the weapons that Ukraine needs. So it's not like we're just giving money. Like it literally is coming right back to the United States to build the weapons that we then send to Ukraine. So
I realize that, coming from where we were as, a party in 2008, coming from where we were, it seems a little silly, a little perhaps surreal to hear liberals and leftists talk about we're building more bombs, but we need to understand the environment that we live in. We need to understand this war is not one that we chose. This is not like an arbitrary, we're going to go in because we think Saddam's got WMDs. Whatever you feel about the Iraq war, this is not that.
Yep.
This has been forced upon us, has been forced upon our allies. We are being asked to contend with it. And we'll either meet the moment of history or we won't. But it's up to us whether we choose to. And unfortunately, I don't know of any better way to militarily defeat Russia than with bombs. To that end, we're building more and more plants to produce artillery shells to supply Ukraine with 155 so that they can continue to pound Russian positions. I'm a big fan of that. Keep doing it. We're building and, we're hiring more workers to staff those factories. These are jobs that go into their local economies. We're continuing to open new lines for tanks. We had actually closed M1 production for a long time, and we're restarting M1 production. For everything that we send to Ukraine, we replace with a newer, better version. This is all stuff from the 80s. It's kind of like how we provided aid to Afghanistan. One more topic I want to address on that subject, just real quick. The recurrent and highly annoying claim that Biden left behind $50 bazillion or whatever number of the day it is worth of military equipment in Afghanistan. You need to consider Afghanistan is about the size of Texas, but it is an absolute nightmare in terms of terrain. It is mountainous. It is rugged. The roads wash out all the time. About 70% of the roads there are seasonal. So meaning if it's the wrong time of year, you don't drive on them. They're gone. So being that it was the springtime, a lot of that military equipment was in use by the Afghan National Security Forces, Afghan National Army, Afghan National Police, all of their various organs. It's scattered to hell and gone all over that country. We had, at that time, 2,500 guys left in theater. That's about a brigade. That's not enough to do routes clearance and security for a single province in Afghanistan to go and get stuff back, let alone the entire country. So the idea that we were going to go out and get military equipment, if Trump wanted that done, we would have had a lot more than 2,500 guys in theater when he left office. The fact that we didn't shows he didn't care. We shouldn't either. This was all old cast-off dinosaur M16s from the 1980s. It's stuff we can afford to lose. China got a Black Hawk. I don't care about a Black Hawk from 1981. I truly don't. Right. And I don't think China will either. It's a helicopter. Calm down.
How about the SCOTUS? Supreme Court of the United States. Why vote Harris?
Okay. So let me go ahead and start this off because I know I touched on a little bit with Chief Justice Roberts and him presiding over the court gutting the Voting Rights Act, right? But let's also, and the fact that they also allowed Roe v. Wade to be overturned. I cannot, what people don't know is that the same week that Roe v. Wade was overturned, that happened on a Friday. That Wednesday, the Supreme Court also came out with a ruling that said that law enforcement does not have to let you know that you have the right to remain silent, and even if they don't tell you have the right to remain silent, because you still have that right. And so if they don't tell you, then whatever you say can still be used in court. And we haven't really been having conversations about that. People just have no idea that actually happened. But like I said, Roe was struck down on a Friday, and that court case came out on a Wednesday. And so, like, this Supreme Court is absolutely rogue. You have three of the four newest members of this court lied to get approved by the Senate to be placed on this damn court. Amy Coney Barrett should have never went on this court because it had, I mean, that was like the fastest confirmation in history. No confirmation should ever be that fast. So for somebody to sit on this court for the rest of their life, it is just, it is absolutely bananas to me. And I will say that we need a President Kamala Harris, as well as a Democratic Congress, Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate, because we need to make sure that we change the law. I'll be honest with you. I absolutely believe we need to expand the court. I hate the term pack the court. Sounds right. But we need to expand the court. And the reason I say that is because we have 13 Court of Appeals in this country. We only have 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices. We should have equal number of justices to the number of Court of Appeals we have in this country. It should be one justice over one Court of Appeals. And right now we have justices that are doing double duties over Court of Appeals. So when people want to know why does appeals take so long, because you have a United States justice that is overseeing 2 courts of appeals. Like, that's not okay, and that shouldn't be. The last time we expanded the court is how we got Thurgood Marshall. So no, we have not always had 9 justices, right? I believe we may have started with 5, and then we got to 9. But the last time we expanded it was how we got Justice Thurgood Marshall. So Congress absolutely can expand this court. And matter of fact, when we expanded it, the last time for how we got Justice Marshall, that's actually what Congress said. Congress expanded it because they said we needed the same number of justices as we had Court of Appeals, and Court of Appeals has grown because the population in America has grown. So it doesn't make sense why we still only have 9, except the people that are on this court want to consolidate power. And living in Virginia, where we don't have a say so over our judges, our judges in Virginia at all 4 levels, we're the only state in the country where all of our judges are appointed and reappointed by our state legislature. We know what that feels like and understand how powerless we feel that we have judges that we have no say so over, right? And so at the end of the day, we're going to put people on this court for life. We absolutely need to make sure that we have enough justices to truly cover the population in this country.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Everybody has their reasons why they're voting in this election. I think one of the biggest reasons why everyone should vote is because of the Supreme Court. I'm totally in favor of, I'm going to say it, packing the court. It's totally needed, particularly now with the corrupt court we have. They're not even trying to play nonpartisan. And that's the sad part about it. And I'll be honest, here's where the Republican Party actually was playing chess while the Democratic Party was playing checkers. And that was the appointment of Supreme Court justices as well as federal judges across the country. McConnell has been the mastermind behind this for years.
Yeah.
And they have done an excellent job at it. So now the Democratic Party finds himself playing catch up and trying to get on offense, which is unfortunate right now. That's always how we've been for so long. Yeah. But I think it's time that we do expand the court, not just to say, hey, we want to put a bunch of justices in place, but very much spot on to what Monica said. There is precedence for this happening. There's reasoning for this being needed to be done now. There also should be an ethics policy that the Biden administration has already proposed for Supreme Court justices, because there's no reason why every other justice in this country has an ethical commitment to their duties opposed to the highest court in the land. They're basically, at this point in time, they are basically untouchable. They can pretty much do what the hell they want to do and answer to no one. That's it. And that's not how our country, our democracy, and our Constitution was built to actually have anyone who's above the law, regardless of how some people may feel, to include the former president. So I'm definitely in favor of 1, expanding the Supreme Court, 2, ensuring that those justices have a code of ethics that they must abide by, and my third point is to bring more diversity to the court. If we are able to expand the court, I will, for one, be one of the loudest voices in cheering for more minority representation on the court. And unfortunately, we talked about Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall. It was a travesty that he was replaced with a cancer such as Justice Thomas. That was a waste of an appointment. They should have listen to Anita Hill because she was spot on. She was correct about the individual who would then, in my opinion, single-handedly go on to do more damage to the black community than any other justice has ever said on that bench. That includes doing segregation.
Right.
And that's how I feel.
Right. And let's not forget, like, he's Geechee. Like, it just blows my mind that this man is Geechee, behaving in this manner. Yeah. And I see somebody ask about term limits. Go ahead, Derek. I'll let you.
No, I was just going to say my only real thought on this. I mean, because y'all have had such great, insights on this, and I agree with everything you both said. One thought on this is difficult to really gauge the impact of federal judgeships and things like that, because people think more about like presidential horse races, Congress, the obvious engines of policy. But I think it's really important to consider these are the people that might randomly declare an entire law unconstitutional and remake radically how we interact with the government or interact with an entire industrial sector based on some ruling that they hand down. So it's worth considering who will be picking justices for and judges for the next, until we do have term limits, have that conversation about term limits for the next foreseeable 20, 30, 40 years. That sets the tone and decides in a rather unique way what kind of country that will be, in ways that make it very difficult for the Biden administration. Even when we have a Democrat presidency and a Democrat control of the Senate, we still have these conservative judges randomly screwing us with insane rulings that don't make sense. And they are lying in front of Congress to get into those jobs.
Right. Absolutely. And it just, I mean, even when we talk about, like the harm that this Supreme Court has done, is absolutely wild, right? Because when they struck down Roe, and Roe was attached to the 14th Amendment. And my thing is 13, 14, 15th Amendment are direct results of the ending of slavery. Slavery was never abolished. I like to just point that out to everybody. But the ending of slavery resulted in 13, 14, 15th Amendment, right? And there was a lot of things that have been attached to the 14th Amendment. Let me just say is that when you look at the things that Donald Trump and his maggots are attacking, pretty much all of them are linked to the 14th Amendment, right? Him attacking immigration and citizenship, because when he was president, he had a denaturalization department in his administration. A lot of people don't know that, right? Like, he literally stripped people of their citizenship when he was president. And so, that's a direct attack on the 14th Amendment that said that if you were born in this country, if you were born here in the United States, you're a citizen, or, you can become a naturalized citizen, right? So the fact that this man was stripping people of citizenship and all of these things, and like I said, the 14th is a direct result of the ending of slavery, that should scare every Black person in America. Because one, if they could take, once again, we know the Supreme Court has no problem taking away rights. Okay. And the Constitution is only as strong as the people that will uphold it. And so with this kind of Supreme Court, I do not have faith that they would absolutely hold a Trump administration at bay if they start to attack United States citizens and our rights that are rooted into the 14th Amendment, because they've already let them do that.
In fact, we've seen them kick open the door.
Right. Exactly. And the only case that Justice Thomas did not mention that's also attached to the 14th Amendment has to do with interracial marriage, because he is in an interracial marriage, right? But every other, all these other cases that are attached to the 14th Amendment, he pretty much told him, yeah, let's, bring us a case so we can address it, except for that one that impacts him. And so once again, it's not supposed to be about them. It's supposed to be about the people. And I know somebody asked about term limits. Honestly, I am down for a debate about term limits. Should they have term limits or not? I think they need, like Tavora said, they need a strong ethical code and all of these things. And, I don't know if we need term limits, or they need to be somehow held accountable to the people of the country, whether that is by a vote to recall them or whatever it may be. But there needs to be something.
They need term limits. They need term limits. I get into with Democrats about this all the time. One of the reasons why I'm so adamant about term limits is, God bless her soul, RBG. I think she did a great job, but at the end of the day, has she stepped down during the Obama administration?
Right.
Obama asked her to. we would have not been in the situation which we're in now.
Right.
And I get into it with Democrat, particularly white Democratic women, all the time about that. But that is facts for me. And just a quick caveat to kind of close out my portion of the SCOTUS discussion is, to be fair, I think that if we took the court and we did it in 14, 7 Democrats, 7 Republicans, and let it remain that way, I think that'll be a better, more fair option. I don't think any party should dominate the court. That's just me. I think that we should if we have the best justices there are appointed, then they should be able to persuade one of their comrades, either one way or another, on very controversial topics to get a majority. But I think that it should be even on both sides of the aisle.
I like that, Taurus. That's well, like I said, it should be uneven though, because we don't ever want to have because even don't get you nowhere. So we have to have an uneven number of justices somehow. But I do see somebody said like term limits is greater than stuffing the court. First of all, like I said, I hate the term stuffing. Expanding the court to match the number of the Court of Appeals that we have in this country. And if you're not familiar with that process, I would urge you to actually look it up to see what I'm talking about when I say Court of Appeals and United States Supreme Court justices, to get a better understanding of why I said one justice, one Court of Appeals, not having one justice presiding over 2 Court of Appeals. It just leads to the justice system we have now. And our justice system should be representative of the entire whole, not a piece of it. And it should not just be on the whim of a justice to decide these cases, because some of these cases never hit the whole Supreme Court.
Right. They get dealt with on the shadow docket.
Right. The shadow docket. Right.
Now, I will say, regarding Antonio's point, I'm actually going to repurpose my argument against term limits to make a point to you that you should consider, Antonio. The fact that right now we have a system where if we nominate a Democrat judge, they might sit in office for 45 years, making your life miserable with policies you don't want, striking things down that you don't like, or whatever. You need to consider that with term limits, that judge might be out of there after 8 years, and you might get a Republican one instead. There will be a lot more turnover of judgeships if we impose term limits. So it's worth considering that we're treating a bit of that sort of steady hand that we kind of treat the court system as, or have historically treated it as. We're treating it for a bit more of kind of more rapid change. And so if you're concerned that we're stuffing the court by imposing term limits, I think we're actually going to do the opposite. I think it's going to create more opportunities for judgeships to change hands between Democrats and Republicans as different, administrations take office. All this assuming, of course, that democracy continues, because in my opinion, it won't under one of the 2 major parties. But
right. Well, but also I think we can't not also mention the fact that this wasn't even an issue the way it is now. Until Donald Trump, right? Like, this man has come in and demolished so much of our country. Once again, we talk about a democracy. This is a piece of it, right? No, we've never been overly satisfied with our Supreme Court, but until Donald Trump got in office, right? It was never this obvious about the partisanship. And so, I would honestly rather us figure out a way to force our Supreme Court back into the mold that it should be, which is as being impartial when it comes to, reading of the Constitution, and not just doing whatever they want to do, and ensure that, it's not that people aren't just buying our constitutionality. That's not okay. Was never okay, and it should not be okay with anybody at all. That's what has happened with Justice Thomas. So, like I said, we just have to also acknowledge that Donald Trump did this. That he has absolutely put our Supreme Court in the tailspin that it's in now when it comes to the constitutionality and the disregard for it by this current Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Mr. Marks, we're a little over an hour now. Was this your time limit up to now? If so, I wanted to give you a good final pitch before you head on out.
I greatly appreciate that. All I really want to say is I want to make sure that everyone gets out, vote now, vote early. I'm encouraging people to go vote in person early, avoid the mail-in ballots. Our mail system right now is not to be trusted. That's just me, particularly right now and during this election time. And if you live here in Central Virginia, you know all about our mail issues, particularly coming out of Richmond and Enrico. But not only that, I want to encourage everyone who's listening and watching tonight. Particularly, there's been a lot of debate around Black men voting for Vice President Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. And trust me, it's so easy to mess that up, and that's not intentional. My name's been messed up since I was born. But I think it's very important that we hear this call, and we're going to heed to this call. I think Black men did that down in Georgia when Stacey Abrams ran for governor. I think they're going to show up again for Kamala Harris as well. And I'm excited for us. I hate the fact that a microscope has been turned on Black men as if we just don't support Black women. I think we do. I know I do. Some of us, I'm going to just say it, some of us are sellouts. You know, that's why you have the marginal, underachieving Black men who run for politics in the Republican Party, because the Democratic Party requires too much more of them that they just they don't want to stand up to that. Tim Scott and others.
Herschel Walker, Tim Scott.
But you know, this is part of being a democracy, exercising our vote, utilizing our vote, and we say it every single year. But I swear, during my lifetime, this is the most consequential election that I will probably ever see, and my children will probably ever see that are teenagers now. I don't think we ever see this again. We're living through history right now. The question is, what side of history are we going to be on? Because we have too many people right now who, in my mind, would prefer a comfortable bondage opposed to a painful freedom.
Yep.
Freedom is not free. It must be fought for.
Yes.
People have died for it, and it's a continuous fight. You don't fight for it and win it and think it's over, because I promise you, there's always someone who's lurking in the background who wants to come and take their freedom from you. And right now, those individuals are in the under the banner of the MAGA Republicans led by Donald J. Trump. I thank you for your time this evening. It's been a great discussion. Derek, appreciate you, brother. I enjoyed being on with you tonight. And as always, nothing but love for my sister Monica. I love you. I appreciate you, Queen. Continue to do what you're doing. And I greatly appreciate all of you. Thanks again for the invite, Conrad.
Thank you, Mr. Tavoris Marks, and behold the green and gold.
Behold! Green and gold.
Have a great night, man.
Yeah.
You too now.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Tavoris said, honestly, because I know a lot of conversation have been on Black men recently. And honestly, it's a little frustrating, right? Because we know that, I mean, everybody knows, right? Like that black women will vote. Women, hold on. You're not Black if you don't vote. I know you're not. First of all, okay, we're gonna tired of this narrative. President Biden said that one time 4 years ago. Donald Trump has done nothing but shown his contempt for Black men and Black people his whole life. So I don't want to hear any of that, because President Biden, yeah, you know what? He may be an awkward ally. He may have said a conversation he should have said when he was in a close-knit family discussion, but we all know what he meant. And we know he was saying kind of a joke about it. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump has shown nothing but contempt for Black people, for the Black community. So please don't do that. Like, don't sit here and bring up, once again, President Biden is not running for president. So all of that is irrelevant, because at the end of the day, we've got a Black woman running for president. And then we have Donald J. Trump, right? So, point blank, period. And I just want to say, when it comes to Black men, at the end of the day, we know Black men will vote at the second highest rate for our future president, Kamala Harris. We know Black women and Black men are the backbone of the Democratic base. That is not a secret. That is not up for debate. We know this. It will be Black women and Black men coming in almost neck to neck when it comes to the voting turnout for Vice President Harris. But you know what's interesting is that this year, I see the attacks on Black men. I hear people talking about Black men. Are they, aren't they? But it is so irritating, because in every other election, it's always been Black women that's been attacked. Well, Black women turn out. What are Black women going to do? But they know this year, they saw when Vice President Kamala Harris, when she was endorsed by President Biden to take the top of the ticket, when with Black women came out, I was one of the 44,000, proudly one of the 44,000 to be on that call. They saw how Black women came out of support. So at the end of the day, that narrative was killed. right then and there. So now they have to have another narrative. They have to have another scapegoat to blame, because if we don't win the election, then the media will absolutely throw it on Black men. But when we win the election, white women are going to end up being a savior of this election. So what I will tell people is, instead of coming for Black women and Black men, what I need people to do is ask white women why a majority of white women continue to vote for Donald Trump. Okay. Man has said, grab him by the cookie. He has shredded our rights.
Yep.
And they're still voting for him just to be power adjacent. And let me just also remind people that in the day, like, I love my white sisters. I do. Some of y'all, I don't know what to say about you. Some of y'all, for real, right? Because I will take it back all the way back to when the 19th Amendment was passed. Black women did not get the right to vote. We didn't, right? It took 45 years for us to get the right to vote. We did not get the right Black women did not get the right to vote until the Voting Rights Act was passed. White women got the right to vote when the 19th Amendment was passed. And I will also add is that to get the 19th Amendment passed, white women kicked us in our ass. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that, but I did. They pushed us all the way to the back and said, to hell with you and your rights. There were letters written. Don't believe me. You can see it. You can see it in the museum here in Richmond. There were letters written by white women to white men that said, giving us the right to vote, it'll be fine because it will still uphold the system of white supremacy. Because giving women the right to vote, the same restrictions that you have on Black men will apply to Black women. So Black women won't be allowed to vote, but we will, and we can vote with you to uphold the system of white supremacy, right? So why am I saying all that? I'm saying all that to say this is absolutely why majority of white women have been voting for Trump. It's to be adjacent to power. And so I need people to be asking white women that question. Don't be coming for me and our brothers. I need y'all to go to white women and ask why they aren't voting to uphold democracy, why they aren't voting for their daughters, their sisters, and their rights, why they are voting for someone who has been found liable of sexual assault of somebody, right? Why somebody who has said grab him by the cookie, somebody who has been convicted of 34 felonies. That's what I need people to ask is white women that question. Don't be coming for me and Black men.
Yeah, I think, when you consider that white women make up 32% of the voting demographic alone, like they are the largest voting demographic. I mean, 2% shift here on that demographic. I'm not concerned about the 5 or 6% of Black men and women that might poll for Trump. I'm not. If they want to vote that way, they're free to do so.
Right.
But what we need to do, absolutely, like you said, is we need to reach the white women and the white men who are voting. Now I'll say white women are polling better for Kamala Harris than they ever have for Democrats. Like it's absolutely stunning how much Republican has done to squander the built-in lead that they've always enjoyed with white women. But he's polling at what, plus 1% now, something like that. It's absolutely insane. He polled at plus 7%. He won at he didn't win, but he had white women at plus 7% in 2020, plus 6% in 2016. So this is, and Mitt Romney pulled more women with Binders of Women. Do you remember Binders of Women? Yes. Now, I supported Mitt Romney at the time, and I tried to give just enough grace to say I think he meant somewhat well. I think he was trying to say, look, I do intend to hire women into my administration.
Right.
He picked the absolute worst way to term it and phrase it and made himself a laughingstock. And, the one thing that I'll say he's been vindicated on was Russia. But it was absolutely one of those things where Trump has squandered one of his most cast iron voting blocks. And so, but yeah, if we end up losing this election, I'm not going to be looking to Black men and women for blame. Absolutely not. It's going to be on white men, white women like myself.
Right. No, for real. Yeah.
How about healthcare? Why vote Harris on healthcare?
Oh boy, why not?
Well, okay. So let's start with the Inflation Reduction Act. And all of the health benefits that came from that, right? Because I know when it comes to capping the cost of insulin at $35 for Medicare patients, Medicare recipients, once again, here goes a revisionist history from Trump trying to make it seem like he did that. No, you didn't. You didn't do that. He attempted to, and I guess it comes back to his concept of a plan, because what he did when he was president, he did make it optional for some Medicare D plans to offer a cap of $35 for insulin. There are a little bit over 6,000 Medicare D plans in the country right now. and around that time, and it was about 2,400 of them under Trump. Maybe 25-ish. It was definitely less than 3,000, but it was like around mid 2000, like 2,500 of them had actually signed on to do it. But those, even the option of them doing it, a third of the plans was set to expire in 2023. So what President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris did when it comes to the Inflation Reduction Act was that they didn't say make it optional. They made it mandatory that Medicare D plans offer insulin with a cap of $35. And so that has been huge, because that means that is now over 6,000 plans, every Medicare D patient. That is huge, because we know that now so many families are intergenerational. I'm Gen X, I'm the end of Gen X, but we're the sandwich generation where we're taking care of our parents and still raising our kids. And so when you have multi-generations in a house, whenever you can ease the burden off of one of the generations, it actually helps to make the financial security of the entire household stronger. And so when grandparents are able to be a little bit more financially secure, the family is able to be more financially secure, right? And just once again, everybody deserves, I shouldn't say once again, but everybody deserves to live with humanity and dignity. We deserve to age with dignity. And so ensuring that people are able to age with dignity and afford their medication is huge. No one should have to choose between their medicine and paying their mortgage, their medicine, or paying their rent. And so that's what this did. And I know that President Kamala Harris will continue on with this when it comes to that. And also the black maternal mortality rate. She has been addressing this for many years, and I know she will continue addressing this, because as of right now, the racial disparity gap between the maternal mortality rate between Black women and white women, it is wider today than it was during the Civil War. And so that is scary. It's a very scary thought to know. And so that's another piece of healthcare that will come into it. Environmental justice is a piece of healthcare that will come into it. And I will also say that when it comes to public safety, we have got to start taking a more public health approach to public safety, because we know that healthy communities are safe communities, right? And so all of these things, once again, intersect. They're intersectional when we think about healthcare.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think one of the best reasons to vote for Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump is the fact that Donald Trump had 4 years in office already to come up with an alternative to the ACA. Nothing. He said he was going to have it ready, week 1?
Yeah.
He was going to have a plan ready week 1. Nothing. Not a damn thing.
Nothing.
So, 4 years later. And then he's had 4 years out of office doing jack, but sitting at home and rage tweeting or whatever it is that he does with his time. And he's had all this time to come up with another healthcare plan. Still nothing. He has nothing. He does not have a plan for healthcare. He doesn't consider women's healthcare to be healthcare at all. He considers it to be abortion. When you consider that they want to defund Planned Parenthood, when 95% of their services are not even relevant to abortion, but are relevant to things like cancer and taking care of just the basics for women in a place that maybe, if you have no one else to turn to, Planned Parenthood will take care of you. Like this is absolutely important stuff. I will absolutely vote for the candidate that offers more healthcare as opposed to less. And so I think it's a no-brainer. This issue.
Right. And just also add that abortion care is healthcare.
It is.
Once again, abortion care is healthcare. And you mentioned Planned
that separately later.
Yeah. And when you mentioned Planned Parenthood, I just want to say that as someone who has, I have actually given birth. And I will say it's really odd, because when you take your home pregnancy test and you call an OBGYN to have an appointment to come in and be checked or whatever, the first thing they say is, okay, do you have confirmation of pregnancy? Well, yeah, I told you I took a pregnancy test. That's not good enough for them, right? You have to actually have a letter confirming that you're pregnant. And so I will say that Planned Parenthood provided that for me every time that I needed it, right? I was able to go to Planned Parenthood. I was able to have the ultrasound. I was able to get the letter confirming pregnancy, so I could take to my OBGYN so I can begin receiving prenatal care from, the OBGYN. So I would just want to make sure I just add that to people, because I don't think people know that like you said, Planned Parenthood offers so many services that are out here. But yeah, no, absolutely.
About that simple, specific service, I had no idea they did that. I mean, it makes total sense that they would. But, it's these simple little things that when Republicans are crafting law, they don't think about these things because they don't know to think about them. They just write these laws, and maybe, if we're lucky, a doctor has looked at the law. Most of the time not, because these are people that had to be told you can't reimplant an ectopic pregnancy. It's over with. It's done. Like we had to tell these people, and I'll admit, I'm not a physician. I work for a biomedical firm as an IT guy, so I'm the furthest thing from a medical professional imaginable. But I will say, it's painfully obvious that the Republicans crafting these laws do not understand anatomy, do not understand biology, don't care to understand these issues, don't care who they're hurting in the process of writing these laws. And it's absolutely outrageous that I think anybody would look at the Republican healthcare plan and think, that's something I want. They don't have, as far as I know, a plan at all. They just will probably keep ACA for another 4 years, and they might half-ass another thing like they did with the $35 insulin thing that ended up being a bad application of a good idea. And then we have to come back and make it work.
Yeah. Fix it, like always.
Fix it and make it better, and then actually have it apply to private insurers so that people like my wife can get access to things that they need. My wife is affected by so many of these things, being a disabled woman who has a kid. And it's absolutely important. And she's also she just became a U.S. citizen 3 months ago.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I'll relay that along to her. Thank you.
I feel more patriotic already.
Was that?
I feel more patriotic already.
It was really cool. It was, I got to say, it was really cool being in the citizenship meeting. I'll say, just kind of as an aside briefly, Republicans for a long time, for my entire life, have always been the Patriot Party. They've always been the party of patriotism. They've always been the party of we love America. And it's pissed me off for a long time, because one thing that I kept from being a Republican is that I truly do love this country. I love its institutions. I believe in its institutions, and I expect it to be as good as they always told me that it was. If this truly is the shining city on the hill that we expect it to be, that I was told that it was when I joined the Army, when I went over there and said, yeah, absolutely, I'll defend this. That is the Army motto. Yes, we'll defend, or this will defend, rather. I expect it to be those things. I love this country. I think that we, as a party that believes in these institutions, should recapture patriotism for ourselves. I'm not saying jingoism, because we don't have to occupy a space where America is better than every other country. I'm not concerned with where America is in the greatness rankings of the world. Are we a great country for the people who live here? And are we a great country to our allies?
Right.
Are we a great country now? And are we a great country to our enemies in the sense that they don't want to attack us? I fear that in a lot of ways we've compromised our authority in these regards, both at home and abroad. And if we have any chance of recapturing that, I think it's with the Democrats. I truly do.
Absolutely.
Coincidentally, my next topic was about immigration. Would you like to touch on why vote Harris for immigration?
Yeah. So, sure. I mean, I'll go. So I would just say, one, I live in Virginia now, but I'm actually a native New Yorker, right? So I'm from Queens. I'm from New York City. I love our diversity. I think it's beautiful. I think diversity is our strength. And I would just say that immigration has always been one of the things that made our country amazing and beautiful and great. Was, we're also the only country that, no matter where you come from, if you come to the United States, you have the opportunity. Like, when you become a citizen, you are an American, right? Like, you are an American citizen. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. But I will also add, for people who come here, who, travel and fight and go through hell and back and come into the country, and they are undocumented, they should never be villainized or demonized, because these are human beings, and we have no idea. We can't even imagine what they fought and what they left to come here, right? And so we need to make sure that we are creating a pathway to citizenship for people, that we are not demonizing our immigrants, whether they are documented or undocumented, because as we see, it started with undocumented brown immigrants, and now it has moved on to I guess documented
Yeah.
Black immigrants.
Temporary protected status. They're
Right.
they're wanting to go after that for Haitian migrants in Ohio,
Absolutely.
even though they are
Absolutely.
here legally.
Right. So if it started, and so once we leave there, who else will they come to? Because, Trump and the MAGATs, to them, a United States citizen is a white person. Honestly, let's be very honest about that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's who they look at as being, who have a rightful claim to the country or whatever foolishness they say. But we absolutely need to fix our immigration system. It's been broken for many, many decades. It's not like it just happened overnight. This has been an issue. And sadly, we do have politicians that would rather run on this issue instead of fix the issue. And that is not okay, because we are messing with people's lives. We have so many dreamers in our country right now who deserve to have stability. We have dreamers who have served in our military, who have been here fighting every day to strengthen our country, to strengthen the fabric of our country. And they love our country because this is their country too. And so, we need to, like I said, treat people with respect and dignity. Because like Tavoris said, the biggest threats to our nation is coming from inside the house. It is homegrown terrorism. So, to me, it doesn't matter about, what you may look like or where you may come from. Like I said, we've got to have a pathway of legal citizenship.
I think people should consider absolutely that we are still today, in all of the trouble that we're dealing with, still a country that people will walk thousands of miles on foot to be in. And I think that that's a very humbling thought when you consider that, these people will walk, through deserts. I've been, when I was in training to become an intelligence analyst, I was out in this, in the desert. It's in southern Arizona. Fort Huachuca is where I did my training. And it was a area where a lot of undocumented immigrants tended to cross through. So we often had, during our training, we had immigrants crossing through our lines, just walking on through, and we were told, don't mess with them. If they mess with you, let us know and we'll report to Border Patrol and they'll come out and pick them up. So, it's one of those things where, despite that, I've grown up in Texas. I'm a Texas native. I live admittedly about probably 12 hours from the border or more. I mean, Texas is an enormous state. But I don't consider what's happening here an invasion. And I think it's utterly tragic that we phrase it as an invasion, because when you call it an invasion and you call people invaders, we need to keep in mind, when you illegally immigrate to the United States, it is a civil infraction. It's not a criminal infraction. You're not even doing something as bad as stealing. It's the equivalent of a speeding ticket in terms of a liability. Like it's something that, yeah, I mean, the government's going to have an interest in you if you do it, but it's not like it's not like they're Kristi Noem and shot a dog.
That part.
But let's keep in mind that this is a civil infraction. They are people that walked, or drove or were trafficked here in some way, and we need to deal with human trafficking. And I love that I'm voting for a president that has prosecuted transnational gangs, has worked against some of these groups in the South, because I know that she understands them. And I'll tell you, I haven't worked against the counter drug mission in the past, but just having a counterinsurgency background, I can tell you it is difficult work. It's hard work. Like, it's going to be a lifetime of engagement from us to deal with those types of issues. But I think we can do a lot to help immigration by simply considering that we have been the cause for a lot of it. We have caused a lot of our own problems. It's not a coincidence that there's a lot of Venezuelan people coming here, because Venezuela is in a state of economic collapse and has been for, I think, 10 years now.
Right. Haiti.
Yeah. They're just now starting to climb out, and some of it was self-inflicted because, Chavez and Maduro can't personally control an economy. That's not how economies work, but whatever they might think. But part of it also was that we wanted it that way. Right. We wanted them to have economic hardship because we didn't want Venezuela messing with oil markets and stuff. So we got what we wanted, but we also got, second and third order effects that we didn't consider. And so we need to be more careful about how we engage in foreign policy. in order to reduce the flow of immigration in a way that doesn't harm immigrants. When they come here, we should treat them with dignity. We should treat them with respect. We should give them help because they made the trip. Why are we going to, they've been through hell already. Why put them through hell again? What's the point? Who are we helping? And, who are we helping with this? But I think that if we can help these countries that we've harmed by either stepping aside and getting out of their economies or by positively investing in their economies and undoing some of the damage that we've done in places like Haiti, because nobody's wanted Haiti to succeed ever since the slave revolt. It's not any surprise that Haiti is one of the poorest countries on earth because most of the countries of the world want it that way. So we need to consider these factors when we wonder, why are all these people coming here? Because they want opportunities and we're the only game in town.
Absolutely. And also just the hypocrisy and irony that the party or the group of people who are once again trying to demonize immigrants make no mention or just try to completely whitewash history, the beginning of our nation, and the fact of all of the harm that our forefathers did to the indigenous people who were living here. It's like there's no acknowledgement of that. We want to talk about invaders. Well, let's talk about who the invaders really were, right? Who really invaded this country? But no, you don't want to talk about that. You want to act like you have always been here. No, you haven't. And so, and at the end of the day, as Democrats, we're the ones who try our best to make sure we're also paying respect to the land for which we stand on, paying respect to the Native Americans who died, who gave their lives, and who lost their land, right? When forefathers came and stole the country, because they stole a whole ass country. Like, let's not forget that they stole a whole country. So, and my ancestors were forced here. So, like I said, the same people who want to whitewash history and act like that didn't happen are now sitting here and trying to demonize people who want to come in for a better life, because that is who we are, right? We're the beacon of hope. We're the country that provides that.
I'd be more worried if people stopped showing up.
Right. And the Bible thumpers, I mean, that literally is in the Bible, right? Like,
do not mistreat the foreigner.
Right. For you were once a foreigner in this land. Like, the Bible literally says this. And the same people that thump the Bibles and try to hawk, Bibles that were made in China, by the way, just completely ignored the actual teachings of Christ that are in those Bibles.
Well, and I think they have some very un-Christ-like hair splitting that they employ in order to get away with that. Well, it says we're not supposed to personally mistreat the foreigner. It says nothing about our government mistreating the foreigner on our behalf.
And this is nothing about our government at all, because our government wasn't a thing.
And this is so typical of, I think, white conservatives, like I formerly was, that we think that, we think this way. We think in terms of, completely lost my train of thought. I apologize. But we think this way in terms of, dang, I was on a roll. I had a really good thought. I have ADHD and it just completely
it happens to all of us.
Me too. I feel you. Struggle's real.
It is.
Well, would you like to move on to education? And why with education?
Let's move on.
Vote Harris.
I'm sure I had a great thought. Maybe it'll come to me later on, but
as soon as it does, just circle right back to it.
You got it.
What's that education? Well, let's just start out with the fact that we know that President Kamala Harris is not going to dismantle the United States Department of Education, which is what we know Trump, the Republicans, MAGATs, and Project 2025 is calling for. They're calling to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, which is a scary, scary, scary thought, right?
Really brings the conversation into focus.
Right. Because I'm sitting here like, as many issues we have with the educational system, trust me, there's a lot. But the thought of not having the U.S. Department of Ed is scary as hell, right? Because I'm like, well, where would we be? That also tells me that we're making some strides, that we are making some gains, I guess, in closing the gap the racial disparity gap, because they wouldn't want to get rid of something if it wasn't benefiting those of us who are not the majority, right? But yeah, it is a very scary thought, and we know that a President Kamala Harris would do, she would strengthen the Department of Education, that she would ensure that all of our children have opportunities to not just be okay, but to actually thrive and have opportunities for success, right? And have access to tools and resources that would allow that success. So, it's just, to me, it's just night and day. We know that last time when Trump was president, he put somebody in charge of education that had no damn business being in charge of education, but she was a donor. They also would like to dismantle the public school education system, and they want the voucher system. They want, they would love to have private schools receive our public school funding. Like, no, that is not okay. It's unacceptable to me. If you're telling me that, parents want to send their kids to private school, how about you strengthen our public schools? That's what needs to happen. Our public school system needs to be strengthened. We need to make, like I said, make sure all of our kids have access to the tools and resources for them to be successful.
I am a unique, I think, well, maybe not unique, but a strange perspective on this. I went to private school for my entire upbringing, private Christian school, a very good one, at least by the standards of our area. And, I thought I got a very good education from it. Now, this was a place, because they were able to inject their own politics into the curriculum however they wanted, because there's no oversight whatsoever, except for, their Christian accrediting, which, I mean, come on, they're just going to be checking to make sure we're studying the Bible. But it's one of those things where I had a history teacher who, when I learned about the Civil War, he unironically called it the War of Northern Aggression.
Of course.
So this is something that's very common in the South where I'm from, where it's private schools are more unconstrained. And I have grown up into someone who has an autistic son who has an IEP. And I know that without the Department of Education, that IEP is absolutely worthless. Matters nothing. Christian schools don't, private schools in general are not required to honor those agreements. They aren't even required to make accommodations for disabled students. They do it if they feel like it. No one's coming up behind them to make sure that they're actually doing it. The school that I went to was not wheelchair accessible, at least not at first. I think they did eventually build some accessibility stuff because it was probably required by the state, but they don't really do any more than the bare minimum is required of them, where disabled students and students who require IEPs are concerned. And that's the whole reason that my son's in a public school. I think that's more important than any facet of what I learned. I think the most important thing for me that kind of helped correct my trajectory instead of turning me into like a far right lunatic was that I immediately left that environment and went into the Army, where it was, you're going to deconstruct an entire religion in order to understand why it motivates people to kill, which made it inevitable, I think, that I would turn around and deconstruct my own religious beliefs. And so I've kind of stepped away from them somewhat, but I have, still respect for the Christians in my life. But it's one of those things where I've definitely changed, and I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had. And these are experiences that were afforded to me by taxpayers. And, for that, I'm grateful. But at the same time, I don't think private schools are a responsible future for this country. I think that the only way forward is public schools. And instead of siphoning taxpayer money into these private Christian schools, we need to keep that money in middle school or in public schools where it belongs, and then continue to invest even more. It's absolutely outrageous, that our teachers are hitting us up sometimes for supplies that they should be able to get with public funds, not have to buy out of their own paychecks. And it's really just to the credit of teachers and how amazing that they are as human beings, that they do all this stuff and they make next to nothing for it. It's an absolute crime. And I don't have any faith whatsoever that Donald Trump or any Republican will ever do anything substantive to fix that.
They won't.
It doesn't compute for them. It's not an interest. It's not something they care about. They, if once they get their private schools, that's the end of their interest in education. They're done. They're not going to do anything else.
I completely agree with you. And you know, COVID was an opportunity for us to reimagine and rethink education, and we have failed our kids.
Yeah.
Because like I work with young people 14 to 24, and one of the things that they are constantly asking is, you know, why do I need to go to school, right? Like, why do I really need to go to school? And whenever they ask us that question, I always tell adults, whatever answer we give them is an answer from 20 plus years ago, right? Because honestly, if we are honest with ourselves, we don't know the answer to that question, because we know that school is not really preparing our children for their future, whether that is college, trade school, or whatever it may be. It's not adequately preparing our kids for their future. I had to help. Listen, my oldest is 21. I had to send my 21-year-old a diagram on how to address an envelope the other day. I was like, what in the world did you do in school that you don't even know how to address an envelope? Like,
we covered that in multiple class
right?
years, even in my private school.
Jesus. I'm like, what the world? So, you know, I mean, like, these are things that they are just not teaching our kids. And I know you said your son has an IEP. I will just say, I don't know what grade he's in, but
5th.
Okay. I tell all parents this. If your child is on the applied studies diploma track, if he does not need to be on that track, please take him off. What parents don't know, what you won't find out if he is, what you won't find out until he's like in 11th or 12th grade, is that an applied studies diploma in the state of Virginia is actually not a real diploma. It is not recognized by the Department of Education. So when our kids graduate with this diploma, in the eyes of the federal government, they have not graduated, which means they cannot go to college, they cannot go to trade school, they can't even join the military.
Nope,
because
we require a GED or a per accredited.
They haven't graduated, right? But they sell this diploma to us, because I have a son who's autistic as well. And I know how they sold it to us when my son was right around 3rd grade, coincidentally, when SOL started. Because what they say is, by putting your child on this track, when it comes to SOLs, then your child, the only difference between the applied studies diploma and a regular diploma is how they take their SOLs. Instead of having the child sit for 4 hours for the SOL, we test them over the year on the exact same material as you know, gen ed students, whatever. That's how they sell it to parents. And like, that's why I said, you don't find out till your child is in high school. By that point, it's too late to change your child's track. The only thing you can do at that point is to, when your child graduates, you have to then convince your child to sit for a GED exam, which, by the way, they have to apply and be approved to sit for that GED exam. And if they are approved for the GED exam, they do not get any of the accommodations that they received when they were in high school per their IEP. How that is not a violation of the IDEA Act, I have no idea. But I will say is that through my regular work, my pay job, we're actually working on this. So there will be a bill that will be that we're looking to present to the General Assembly this year, or working on getting a patron to have it presented in the General Assembly to reform the applied studies diploma, to have it be a modified standard. The crazy part is, if they change it to a modified standard diploma, which really not much would have to change, just pretty much the classification of it, it would be recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. And when the child graduated, then that just opens up avenues. Like, I understand not all children are capable of, the same thing, right? But if they're not capable of going on to other things, then they still graduated. But if they are, then we're not holding them back, because our babies on the spectrum, schools love to put them in ROTC program, because it's great for our autistic babies, that discipline and all that. But you put our autistic babies on this in the ROTC program, you get them like loving the military, bang. And then when they graduate, they can't even join the military.
I had to break my son's heart this way. He never got into ROTC. He hasn't had a chance to yet, but he's expressed interest multiple times in joining the military. And I'm told him, I'm sorry that according to the current regulations, your diagnosis of autism would preclude you from joining. It's just the way that it is, unfortunately. He's not happy to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
it's terrible that they get them into it, because it appeals, and I've come to suspect that, I'd like to eventually have a diagnosis confirm it, but I've come to suspect that I might have been on the spectrum, or might have been considered on the spectrum as a child as well. And I kind of stealthed it. If so, in the military, I was never diagnosed with ADHD until after I'd gotten out and had gone to the VA for diagnosis. So a lot of what I eventually learned about neurodivergence came after I had already gotten through the military recruitment system. So none of it was on paper anywhere. But it's really tragic. And it's good to know about this alternative diploma program, because I think coming into this conversation, I had no idea that was a thing. Right. I'll have to watch out for that in Texas. I'm sure they're doing something like that here.
Yeah. So I try to make sure I tell as many parents as possible, because this is a systemic issue across the country. It's like I said, it's the Applied Studies diploma here in Virginia, but hopefully it'll be changed.
Good deal.
I see I know Conrad probably about to wrap up.
15 minutes until 2 hours. I don't know about your timetables, but I want to be respectful and sense that if you guys provided in the chat the rest of the questions that I had, if you guys want to pick and choose which one you would like to individually do, or perhaps just rapid fire, you can do it all at once if you want.
Yeah, we can do some kind of abbreviated thoughts on these topics.
Absolutely. I would just say, so I have 3 kids. My baby is 17. That's the one on the spectrum. My middle child is 18. So I have 2 seniors this year. Pray for me. And my oldest is 21. But my oldest, my middle, my youngest are my sons, and my oldest, I have a trans daughter. And so I absolutely love our future president, Kamala Harris, when it comes to LGBTQ rights, because when she was the Attorney General of California, she fought really hard when it came to protecting the rights and marriage equality and love who you love and all of these things, and make sure that she was trying to create a safe space. And so I know that having her as president, that would ensure my child is a little bit more safety as she navigates this cruel world that is so cruel to trans people, especially being a Black trans woman. So having her as president would, and as a mom, just help. It would help to know that somebody sitting in the highest office of the country, the most powerful seat in the world, is an ally to our LGBTQ babies, and would treat them with dignity and love and respect that they absolutely deserve, and not treat them with disdain and hatred. So like I said, for my baby and all the other babies out there, we need a President Kamala Harris to protect them.
We do. And on the subject of climate change, I saw that was one that you mentioned. Trump has no plan for climate change. None whatsoever. His plan is to just deny that it happens and hope it goes away. It's not going away. It's getting worse. And we're seeing that it's getting worse. Phoenix just posted one of the hottest runs of high temperatures in history, breaking the record that they set last year and the record that they set the year before that and the year before that. Every year we're finding is the hottest year of our lives so far. And it's only getting worse. We have these enormous hurricanes that are intensifying in the space of 12 hours, coming and slapping the East Coast with devastating effects that, the likes of which we've never seen. 12-foot storm surges in some places and stuff being projected by some of these storms. Like, it's absolutely outrageous. I think that, the fact that Donald Trump does not have a plan on this issue alone is a reason to vote for Kamala Harris on this issue. But the fact that she does have a plan makes it even better. She's got a successful record of helping to get climate change legislation passed. And she at least acknowledges, hey, this is an issue that's going to impinge on agriculture. It's going to impinge on security. It's going to impinge on all kinds of facets of our society in ways that we haven't even comprehended yet. I have written papers, very short papers, admittedly, but I've written a paper for college on the security effects of climate change through the 2040s and the 2050s. I don't really want to darken the mood too much for this discussion, but it's going to be a very bad century for humanity in a lot of ways that I don't think humanity is ready to really deal with. I don't want a man like Donald Trump at the helm when we start to have these uncomfortable conversations about, look, the Middle Eastern breadbasket is about to be gone. The Atlantic main ocean current is about to be gone. 75% of all species on Earth are gone. These are serious problems. Donald Trump has no plan to deal with them. Probably doesn't even know these things happen. The man probably doesn't care about any animal that's not directly in front of him. And even then, probably not that. We're dealing with people who shoot their dogs when they're recalcitrant. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, like what we're hearing out of some of these people. So it's one of those things, I think, where we need to consider Climate change is one of the most serious threats we face in the future, from a security standpoint, from a energy standpoint, from a survival standpoint. Once we hit the point of no return, we do not rock back. We're in for the long haul. And I would honestly say, me personally, I think we're already locked in. It's just a matter of damage reduction at this point.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. I mean, like you said, it's damage reduction at this point. We can't reverse the effects that we've caused of climate change. The fact that we have so many glaciers that are breaking off is a really scary thought. And you know, when I was younger and I would hear people say that, honestly, it almost makes it sound like it's like chipping off at the top until you get older and you realize that for a glacier to break off, it's breaking off because that sucker it is connected all the way down to the Earth's core. Like, it doesn't just stop at the surface, like it's all the way down to the floor. So if it's breaking off, like, it's cracking because the Earth's core is heating up. And so
like huge, like
right. And I'm like, when I don't know, you know, I'm 44, so I'm like, that's like some years ago, but like that just kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, oh, we've been looking at this so the wrong way. And so whenever they keep talking about the Earth's core heating up, I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense, because it really is having such an impact on so many things, on our ocean, on our glaciers, and all of these things. And I agree. And when we look at even the ocean and the sea foam and how, you know, it's bleaching so many of the you know, things that's the sea. Oh my God, Mom drawing a blank. You know, the things that sit in the ocean, like they're
like,
being
oh yeah, coral, like the Great Barrier Reef.
The coral reefs, the coral reefs are being bleached, which means that they're dying, right? And we're seeing all of these things happening. And even when it comes to hurricanes, you know, I mean, I'll admit it's pretty cool to see when the hurricane can suck up water from one place and you're like, oh my God, I'm walking on the bottom of the ocean floor, and it spits it out later. But then you realize that, yeah, it's sucking up all of that marine life from this particular region and spitting it out into a region that is not native to. And so now we're getting mutations of animals. We're getting all of these things that are happening. We're getting animals that are out of its ecosystem. It's tearing up the ecosystem. All of these things are an effect of climate change. And so when people deny it, it is just wild to me. I'm like, what the hell?
We're in a space where people don't just deny it. They actively think we're driving it. They think that, you know, we're controlling these hurricanes somehow. And just to address that point briefly, if for whatever reason you think we can steer a hurricane, consider these are titanic forces. Like, you know, any of the viewers out there, consider these are titanic forces beyond any power that we can generate as human beings. A single hurricane generates more power in, I think, a day than we generate in decades.
Right.
Like, just absolutely mind-boggling how much energy these generate. So we cannot control that. The cloud seeding that we did to drown rice crops in Vietnam is nothing like what we're talking about here. It is an entirely order of magnitude more difficult to engineer an entire hurricane. And consider this: we are the United States of America, the country that invented the term shock and awe. If we had the ability to steer a hurricane, don't you think we would have sent one right up the Gulf, up to Saddam Hussein, and said, here's our answer to you? You know, if we had the ability to send hurricanes after people, we would be doing a lot more cool stuff with them than letting them run through Florida.
We would be. Absolutely.
We would be redirecting them away from the United States at minimum and just saying, look how star-spangled awesome we are for redirecting these hurricanes.
Right. Because and not causing trouble.
This is like sci-fi stuff that they're talking about. If I wish we could do this, that would be cool. I want to be the party that can shape the winds and the waves, but that's not us.
No, it's not. It's nobody. Like,
all we can do is fund FEMA and help after the fact.
Absolutely. And then I know when we're about to wrap up, but I will also say, when it comes to, you know, I know people talk about crime. One, crime is going down. And once again, this is another scare tactic that Republicans like love to do. That is dripping with racist undertones. I don't even want to call it a dog whistle at this point. Like, they're just using a full blown megaphone to blast this. Right. They're just blasting it out to scare people. And, you know, then also we talk about our young people, and we talk about, you know, youth who may be committing harm. Right. And like I said, I work with young people 14 to 24, you know, and I just remind people that our kids are a direct representation of society, of us. And so if we don't like what we're seeing in our young people, then we need to take a really hard look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what behavior are we showing them that they are imitating, that they're patterning after, right? Because they're kids, they're children. And none of our kids come here with all the answers. None of us came here knowing everything. And like I said, this is learned behavior. But I will just say that as adults, we must absolutely prioritize the health and safety of our young people, to ensure, like I said, that they are able to thrive and succeed later in life, and as they grow. And that also includes securing firearms at home, right? Making sure that our kids have access to healthy environments, that we are also setting healthy boundaries for our young people as they are growing up, because whether kids know it or not, kids want boundaries and they thrive on boundaries, and we must set healthy boundaries. We also have to ensure that we have healthy outlets for our kids to just be kids, right? In the Richmond area, and honestly, I'm pretty sure across Virginia, when you even look at parks for kids, most of the parks are attached to schools. Like a lot of localities don't have a lot of freestanding parks for kids to walk to. And if there is a freestanding park, there is no sidewalk, it's no easily walkable path for kids to just go to the park and be a kid. We don't have rec centers
here in my neighborhood.
Right. We don't have rec centers for the kids. We don't have after school programs for the kids. We don't have mentorships for the kids. And any of the after school programs or mentorship programs we do have is extremely expensive. And so the families who are the most vulnerable, the kids who are the most vulnerable, they can't afford it. And so now, once again, we've created a classist, elitist system when it even comes to after school care for kids. And that means that parents have to leave their kids at home unsupervised, which leaves them vulnerable to outside to people preying on them, right? Or parents have to cut their hours short at work, and that's less money coming into the household. And so all of these things, and once again, they intersect. This is why I absolutely am voting for Vice President Kamala Harris to be our next president, because I know that she will work to address this. And I know that without me, Monica, sitting at the table, I know that I will be still represented at her table when it comes to working on these issues, that she sees us. She sees all of us. She sees all of these issues. And she actually genuinely cares about making sure that we all have a voice and a hand in coming up with solutions to these problems, not just hashing it out, not just, saying the problem over and over again, but actually working towards solutions to address the problems that we are identifying. That is why I'm voting for her.
Yes, me too. Me too. I want sane, effective leadership going into the next 4 years. I don't necessarily expect that I'll get everything I want with Kamala Harris. I don't even necessarily know everything that I want. Like, it's difficult right now just getting through the day. But I do know that I want our government to be led by people who know what they're doing and who care about the work and who care about the government. We keep electing Republicans who say government doesn't work. And I don't know why we keep electing them into office, because then, of course, government doesn't work. We fill it full of people who believe it doesn't and that it shouldn't. So, of course, when we install them, things don't go well. I think that our best chance for surviving any of the crises that we have arrayed against us, and they are numerous, is to elect Democrats up and down the ballot.
Up and down the ballot. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. And so that I just also want to add that yesterday was the voter registration deadline for regular voter registration here in Virginia. But since VR ended yesterday, beginning today, we have same day voter registration. So yes, because of Democrats, we have 45 days of early voting. I know people like to call it absentee voting. It is not. It is 45 days of voting, of early voting. So when you go to your, just look it up to see at elections.virginia.gov to see where your early voting site is, you can register to vote, change your address the same day that you can cast your ballot, thanks to Democrats. So really cool. That is something else, that we have, and that will go on through Election Day. Is same day voter registration. So if you have not registered yet, please do not do it. If you have not registered online, do not do it online, because you may not get it in time. So like I said, same day voter registration is what you have to do. And you have until October 25th to request a mail-in ballot. The deadline is October 25th. If for some reason you receive your mail-in ballot, but you decide that you absolutely would rather vote in person, you take your ballot to your precinct. If you filled it out, that's fine. You still take it to the precinct. What they'll do is they will tell you what the next steps are, right? Whether that is opening up the ballot, and counting it, or destroying. They have to have a record if they are voiding that ballot and handing you another one. But there are steps and there is a protocol in place. So whether you filled it out or it is blank, if you received your ballot, you take it with you to your precinct and let them know what you want to do, and you follow the next steps. If you did not receive your ballot, but you did request one, once again, there are steps and protocols in place for that. But above all, you cast your vote. That is the most important thing. And if you decide to go on November 5th, which is the actual election day, then if for some reason you go to the wrong precinct, that is okay. If you cannot make it to the correct one, they have to let you vote. Once again, please do not leave without casting your ballot. And if you are in line by 7 p.m., do not leave. You get to vote. If you have any problems, just know there will be people inside to help you rectify that. And you can always go to the Democratic table, to the whatever Democratic candidate is there, or the Democratic Party in your locality. And I promise you, or your local NAACP, I promise you that we will ensure that you get all of the correct information that's necessary and the information to file a complaint should it come to that.
That's all really good information.
Well, in that instance, I believe both of you have authoritatively given your reasons why to vote for Kamala Harris. Wanted to get that exact, as close as I can get it.
Thank you.
For president of the United States coming by November 5th. I want to thank you for being willing to jump on, to share your opinions, to be patient for what is now an over 2-hour-long show. I don't want to keep you guys that much longer. So again, thank you. It means a lot to me to come on the show and just give me your reasons why. So I hope to you guys have a great night, and that we continue this conversation in the very near future.
Monica, this was wonderful. It was great to talk with you.
Likewise, Derek. Thank you, comrade.
Thank you. You guys have a great night.
You too. Good night.
All right. Now I also want to give my piece on Kamala Harris. It's only fair, as I did the same thing with Donald Trump on Monday night. Now, Kamala Harris has the potential to be great, but is she being great? I have no qualms with voting Democrat for president. I did it with Biden. But at the time, there wasn't a genocide going on in Palestinian territories, and we weren't funding and arming it. We are now. And I saw those recent pictures of people burning to death in tents at a makeshift Gaza hospital. And I still know Ms. Harris recently said she wouldn't put any conditions on Israel prior to the recent thing about the 30 days. It just seems a little late in the game to be offering that 30 days to those individuals in the tent. This is the Democrat Party, and this is stuff I'm expected to grin and bear it on. There needs to be a party that does not support genocide. And we can't just say it's okay because Trump is worse. And on the topic of Trump, considering I know how bad he is, we all know how bad he is, and he lacks in popular support among independents and the general public. So why can't the Democrat Party step up and be bolder? They can afford to. Bold and aggressive policy and pointing out how weird those fascists are. Why are we supporting the Cheneys now? Why should I care if so much military-industrial complex-laden Republicans are supporting Ms. Harris? It's true, I like other things like Medicare for all and complete student loan debt cancellation. Why cannot she run on supporting that, similar to her first campaign in 2019? She was more fond of humanitarian immigration policy then. Now she's siding with conservative border bills that move to make her more hawkish on the border than Trump even appears to be at times. I used to be a libertarian. I'm a progressive now, but my drug law and border law support is very close to libertarian, and I don't want her to run closer to Republicans on that matter. This is a big opportunity to retire Trump for good and set the Democrats up on the map for many a year. I just want them to be less hawkish on the military scale, less hawkish on the border, less hawkish on drugs, supporting militarized police, and very expansive on social welfare like basic income support, guaranteed health care, and student debt. The fact Donald Trump is so bad should convince them to be so bold and so progressive. But I'm left wanting, so I'm still skeptical. But as you heard tonight, you have reasons to vote for her. I hope you all watched that independent video I did. I hope you watched the Why Trump Show. I hope you like this show and like it and subscribe and comment, because if you subscribe to this channel, it can grow. The more it gets to you, the more filled with information you'll be. Tomorrow, I will be interviewing Jennifer Naparella for City Council in Chesapeake. And tune in next week when SchezzWho goes over the entire Virginia Beach ballot from school board up to the president. And I'll have on conservative Jimmy Frost, who missed that Trump show, and progressive Melissa Luxon to battle it out on that very topic. I hope you all have a great night, and I will catch